Jeff from JeffTV. How's it going? So we're back again. This time I'm going to continue on more with the sort of the equipment that you're going to need to get started. In the last video I did sort of like don't sort of go this way or that way, but I figured it would be easier in this next video to kind of talk about the things that you could do and the things that you should do when you're starting to get when you're beginning with Asiatic archery and you want to sort of, you know, what to purchase and what sort of equipment to use and that sort of thing. And I thought I'd just do a quick talk about, I mean, obviously if you're interested in this video then you probably saw the last one where I was shooting and you were probably wondering what I was doing. But I knew that I was going to come to this video and explain in a bit more depth. So yeah, so when you start with thumb draw, you don't want to start with a 40-pound bow, or a 50-pound or a 60-pound or anything like that. It's way too much. Your thumb is not conditioned to the strain that you're going to put on it. By far the greatest mistake that you will make when you start in Asiatic archery and learning how to do the thumb draw is if you start with a bow poundage that's too heavy for you. So even if you're a great big strong muscly guy, I recommend you start with a 30-pound bow, 30 pounds at 28 inches. I've got a really awesome bow that I bought recently from Bow, which we're going to look at. But first I wanted to sort of go over some of the equipment that you have on your hands, and because you're using your fingers, you know, you don't want to damage them. So what I do is on my hand, you can see here I've got this tape, and it's this you can hear it. It's a sort of elastic tape. You can see that, but it sticks onto itself. What I do is I get about, I don't know, about that much. What's that, like 10 inches or so, and I wrap it around 2 or 3 times, and you want it about 1 inch wide, and you want it to cover that joint there, right? So you can see it's there. So if you look on this thumb, it's covering from about halfway there to there, so it covers that bit in there, but on your right hand, obviously, if you're right-handed. Okay, so it's going to be in there. Now that when you start, you need that extra bit of protection, and it's just a very, very cheap way. You can buy this tape for like, I don't know, less than $5, and when you get the whole reel of it, of course, it lasts a long time. I mean, I keep using these pieces. They last, you know, you can shoot probably about 5 to 10 times with them before you have to replace them. And they're really good because they do actually toughen up your thumb, but without sort of damaging your thumb. You can overdo it right at the beginning if you use your thumb too much. Don't bother with a thumb ring when you first start. That's a whole nother level of complexity, which we'll go into later on. The other thing that I like to use, because if you shoot a lot, and I shoot in this traditional Asiatic manner, so I use arrows that have feather fletching. I'll just grab one actually. So you can see it's got feather fletching. Now the thing is with that, it sticks out quite a bit, and when that shoots past your left hand, which is on the bow, as it shoots past like this, what happens is the fletching will often hit you on here, and you can see on my hand there a couple of red marks. But it's called fletch burn, and I've actually shot on occasion where I've actually worn away the skin, and there's a little groove in there where I've like been shooting and not realised, and you touch it and you're like, wow, what's going on? You've lost, you know, the surface layer of the skin has disappeared. I'll just put that down. So what I like to wear is this, well, it's a very simple arm brace like this. It goes on your hand, but the important part of it is this part here. You can see that? It covers your fingers. You can see where this has changed colour. This leather has changed colour where the arrows, because I shoot Mediterranean style and Eastern style, it's on both sides. And then the great thing about this one is it just has this very simple sort of strapping mechanism where you just wrap it round and then you tuck it in there, and that's it, it's done. It also protects you on here. When you begin, you're gonna hit your forearm, and you want one that's, I wouldn't get like, don't get a short one. Don't get a short arm guard that only comes to here, you know, from this point to this point, because this is where you get hit here on the muscle, the meaty part of the muscle. If you get slapped there a few times, you can end up with some really impressive bruising. Asked my wife one time, she's got the best bruises sometimes. Anyway, so you want something that comes up a bit further, not all the way up here, but certainly at least to just past the middle of the forearm. And then anything that does happen when you do a bad release and your stance is not right and your technique's not quite right and the string does hit you, that'll save you from getting this bruising on your arm, because you don't want that. You know, I don't like that. So I'll just take this off again, and you can see how quick it is to come off. And these don't cost much. You can buy them for like $15–20. I was thinking about making one, but for $15 to $20 I may as well just buy one and get it sent to me. They're available at all sort of good archery shops. You get something like that. Sometimes you might get it that it's just around your wrist and it covers your fingers, and then you get a separate arm guard or van brace, I think it's called. Anyway, so let's move on to the bow. So the bow that I've got today is a very interesting bow. It's made by Alibo, which is a Chinese company, and they make really good replicas of bows, and they do laminated bows and they do fiberglass bows, and this is a fiberglass bow, and this is what it comes with. So you get this nice sleeve that it's in there, and then this is a bow, it just comes with the one string. Now this is a 30-pound bow. Now this is what they call the Tartar Bow, and it's fiberglass, 30 pounds at 28 inches. This is a fiberglass limb. There's wood here, there's wood in the handle, fiberglass limb here, and this is wood too. Now this part of the bow, this is called the Siya, and there's actually two components to it. It's Siya, S-I-Y-A-H. The nomenclature that we use in Asiatic archery in the Western world comes from when Western culture met Eastern culture, and that was in Turkey when it was concerned with archery. And so the nomenclature that we use, the words that we use to describe things, they come from the Turkish tradition of shooting. So Siya is a Turkish word, and this is called the bash, this part here, and this is the kazan. So it's interesting that if you look at the length of these, they're about the same. Now, in the bow that we looked at before, the Mongol bow, the bush was incredibly long. Now, what's interesting about this bow, from my perspective, from a historical perspective, even though this is a Chinese reproduced, it's a copy, a reproduction, if you like, of an original bow type from the Crimean Tartars. The thing about the Crimean Tartars is that culture has always been, that area of Europe, it's all been a place in flux, a country in flux, or a location in flux. And back in the Viking Age, which is something I'm really interested in, the Rus, who were the sort of hybrid Norse continental Vikings, so they mixed in with different cultures on the trade routes. These are the Eastern Vikings that were coming from predominantly like the trading enclaves in Birka and Gotland, and so they're heading into Russia, and of course they're going down between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, down towards Persia, what's now Iraq, and to Baghdad. Baghdad was a huge trading town, enclave, to heading out on the Silk Road, to India and China. So these Rus, this Norse culture or hybrid culture, I was just reading a paper recently that in exactly in that area where this bow comes from with the Crimean Tartars, they're finding Rus bows now as a Russian archaeological paper. And when I looked at the dimensions of the bows that they were finding, they were exactly the same as this, even though it's some sort of fiberglass bow. But even the bash and the kazan were the same size. So the proportions were all kind of correct. So there's a bit more sort of flex in the handle. You can see it's like, this is the face of the bow. You can see it sticks up quite a bit. It's got a beautiful angle, and when we string it, you'll see. Yeah, so any of you sort of, Viking reenactors out there interested in getting a first bow and you do Eastern Vikings, this bow is really, really spot on for a Rus bow from the 8th, 9th century. It's just, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. So anyway, it's a good analog. It's not an exact copy, of course, but it's a good analog. Right, so It's called the Tartar Bow again. It's from Alibo. It cost me, oh, I put the arrow in the wrong place and it's blocking up the text. It cost me $75 US, which is a really good price. It's $42.50 for shipping, which you have to live with that. You know, it's not cheap, but you just have to live with it if you want it, especially if you live in Australia like I do. The maximum draw is 31 inches. This is a 30-pound bow, but it comes in a range of draw weights. I believe up to 55. There's no arrow weight recommendation, but what's amazing about this bow is it only weighs 475 grams. That's, I mean, it's just so light. It's amazing. It's just amazing. So the length of the bow when it's strung, I'll string it. I'll give you, I might as well string it up. It's a very easy bow to string. You can see that the fiberglass here is pretty much straight, so they've just used one straight piece. There's no shaping or anything into it. It's got this sort of whipping. I'm not sure what it's made of. It's probably nylon, but it looks like silk. It's got a leather grip on here. Yeah, and there's leather over this, and it's sort of strapped on in this way like this, which is kind of like a way of covering up the fiberglass limb. And of course, this is what they did originally, because the biocomposite bow that this is based on, which is made of horn, wood and sinew. I think I said it wrong the last time. I think I said that the horn was on the outside, but of course it's always the sinew that's on the outside, then the wood, and the horn's on the inside. They're very susceptible to humidity, and it means that the glue that holds them together, which is like this fish glue or animal hide glue perhaps, it starts to fall apart, so they had to protect them. So they always had a case that they were carried around in. I found this from the Rus finds in parts of the Rus Khaganate, and they found bow cases, and they're the same shape as this bow. They're actually a kind of container that it's like a wooden container that they're held in. But they had leather around the limbs to stop the moisture getting in and sort of delaminating the whole like biocomposite composition. So yeah, it's interesting. So anyway, I'm going to string it. So I've got this interesting feature on here. Actually, it's the wood. Actually, there's appears to be like a bamboo insert in there just below the nock, just to give it a bit of extra strength. So yeah, let's do the step through method. Get that on there. Just have to pay attention. This one flexes quite a bit. And we always make sure that everything's on. Step out carefully. Make sure it's nice and straight. Yeah. Nice and straight. That's all good. You can see there. So 6 inches brace height. They're the same size on each side. Same distance. So that's good. It's kind of a bit flexible that way, but this way it's quite stiff. It's quite stiff. You can see I'm quite. So again, I'll just reiterate that when you're a beginner, you want a bow that has a certain amount of stiffness in the limbs. And when we say stiffness, we mean like this direction and this direction, so that not too wobbly. Because if it's something that's wobbly, when you're trying to do the step through method and trying to string it, there's a chance that you'll bend the bow in the wrong direction, in the wrong plane, in a plane that's not designed to bend in. So the more stiff they are, particularly this way, it means that as you crank it over, with your hand, it's going to move. As you push like that, it's going to move this limb in the direction it's going to move in, and it's going to resist moving sideways. That's one of the reasons for getting a fiberglass bow, is that you can you get that stiffness. Right, so we've got some measurements. So from there to there is 48 inches, which is pretty much spot on for the Rus style bow. The nock to nock length, so when this is unstrung and you measure along here from nock to nock, that is 49.5 inches. And I'll just open this piece of paper. Right, now that gives you an F value of 0.63. Now that's pretty good, actually. So in talking about the F value, what we're talking about is a calculation where you have the you divide the length of the bow from that point to that point divided by the length nock to nock measured from there to there, and it's all done in inches, and you'll end up with a figure, and in this case you end up with 0.63. What you then do is you multiply 0.63 by the poundage of the bow, in this case it's 30 pounds, and then you times that gives you the weight of the arrow in grams. But then you times that by 15.432, and that gives you the weight of the arrow in grains. And I mentioned before that grains, it's an old form of measurement for measuring gold. There's 7,000 grains to the pound. So in this case you end up with 270 grains, the minimum arrow weight that you should use with this. There's no minimum arrow weight recommendation from Alibow. I didn't say anything on there, nothing on their webpage. And the bow didn't come with any information, so 270, that's quite light. As this is a fiberglass bow, and fiberglass is intrinsically more heavy material, even though these are quite thin. They're only, I don't know, they're no more than 30 mil wide, and it's just a straight piece on each side. And as I said, this only weighs 475 grams. It's really quite light. It's quite nice to hold on to. It feels like nothing in your hand. The thing about having a light bow as well, which is really cool, is that there's this technique called Khatra, K-H-A-T-R-A, and that when you use that, it sort of helps the arrow move past the bow, and you sort of flicking the arrow at the same time. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that it actually does make the bow shoot faster as well, but it ends up you actually have a better shooting experience with Khatra, and there are all different sorts of Khatra, but when you have a light bow like this, the Khatra that you use it allows you to move it more easily when it's nice and light. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing that it's light, and they should be light, in fact. Right, so 270 grain arrow, that's a bit light. I don't have any of those. I think the lightest I've got is about 400. And if you're shooting a fiberglass bow, even a 30-pound one, I would suggest that you probably start with about 400 grains, because you want to remove any hand shock that exists and vibration, and because of all that weight that's moving forwards, because of the heavier limb material, you don't want to shoot with that all the time. It's not a pleasant experience. It will put you off shooting completely. So that's why I'm recommending it to you as beginners. That's what you want to start with. Right, so let's have a look at how this bow draws. It's quite magnificent shape. It's 48 inches from the strung length from point to point. I'm just going to put my hand on here. The arrow, this is a little bit small, perhaps. It's quite narrow though. It's what I'd say at the point where we're looking through here, that's no more than, I would say, 25 millimeters. So that's quite nice. A narrow arrow pass means that you can get more accuracy, because you're aiming sort of more onto the target, in the same way that modern bows have that sort of step, this arrow shelf, which pushes the arrow more towards the center of the bow. So if you have a narrow arrow pass, it's the same thing. If you look at the width of the limb there, and then you look at the arrow pass, it's narrower. So that's good. It's good features. Anyway, and it's ray skin on here, actually, the arrow pass, and it goes on both sides. So if you wanted, you could shoot Mongol style with the thumb draw with the arrow on the left side, like in the Western tradition, or you could shoot like the traditional Asiatic style, where you have thumb draw with the arrow on the right hand side of the bow, and you've got protection on both sides. Or if you wanted, you could shoot Mediterranean style. I mean, there's no reason you can't. Hungarians, they often shoot this Laszlo Kasai, I think his name is. He shoots in a Western tradition with the arrow on the left hand side. Anyway, let's have a look at the way that this draws, and I'll tell you what the draw experience is like. I haven't drawn this one for a while, so we'll just have a go. So I'm just going to use my fingers on here. Okay, so that's not bad. There's not too much there. Oh, and then you get this relaxing of the limb. That's good. And that's easy. That's easy to pull that to there. And 31 is the maximum draw on here, so we're talking about there somewhere. And I can draw that quite easily, with my fingers, of course. So yeah, so the draw curve is quite pleasant. It's a fairly gentle increase. It doesn't ramp up too quickly. Let's just have a look what it happens. Yeah, it's stacking around 31. So once it gets the draw curve, if you like, sort of distance, as it comes up towards 31, it does come up like that, and fairly quickly as well. But up to that point, it's quite pleasant. It's not too steep a gradient. Yeah, that's very nice, and the shape of it's magnificent. I love the way it curves around on here. That's how they should look. Look at that curve. That's how they should look. When you've got a horse bow, that's what you want, that shape. Yeah, quite cute actually. I like this one. Right, so we've talked about the ray skin, the reinforcements, the narrow arrow pass. Yeah, like I said, that really gives good accuracy. The draw curve is pleasant, and I think, yeah, you know what? I think we should shoot. We should really do some shooting. Let's do that. Yeah, come on. So we're going to do some shooting now. This is the Tartar Bow from Alibow, 30 pound at 28 inches, and I'm gonna so that we keep some form of blah blah blah.